The PlayStation. Textured polygons, blistering speed, amazing audio, 32-bit graphics, a very comfortable controller. What else could a gamer want in 1995? To that question, Namco had quite a remarkable answer: the NeGcon. Released to provide driving control that went well above what a standard gamepad could offer, this specialized analog twisting wheel controller was designed to bring an accurate and very fun new way to play the new flagship Namco titles, Cyber Sled, Air Combat, and Ridge Racer. Sony had established Namco as the leader of their platform software designers, and when Namco released the NeGcon, all steering wheel devices were now destined to use this special NeGcon protocol as a standard in the programming of PlayStation 1 driving and flight games. So, a number of controller manufacturers jumped on the bandwagon to follow the NeGcon's lead, and this was mostly spurred on by the amazing success of Ridge Racer and Destruction Derby. The company Performance released the Ultra Racer, which was my original PlayStation racing controller of choice. Just like the NeGcon, it had these peculiar Roman numeral 1 and 2 analog buttons for use as the brake and as well as the acceleration, as well as some digital buttons that they called A and B on the face of the controller. So anyway, there were other controllers that got released as well. A compact RC handheld controller with a wheel mounted on the side, the Air Racer, the Gamester Pro Racer handheld racing wheel, and a number of steering wheels, including the Mad Catz steering wheel that I ended up getting in the first year or two of being a PlayStation owner. And you could use any of these controllers and get a satisfactory game playing experience. But when Psygnosis released the much anticipated hovercraft combat racer Wipeout, the gaming public awoke to the wonder that the NeGcon was. It stood head and shoulders above all the competition due to its even-handed, slick styling, which enabled left and right index fingers to trigger the left and right air brakes while twisting the controller to steer. The weapons were managed with the buttons on the right side of the controller, while the D-pad on the left side was used to adjust the pitch of your vehicle. The setup was genius, and this made it the go-to controller for Wipeout and eventually the sequel known as Wipeout XL in the States and Wipeout 2097 in the UK and Europe. In fact, when Gran Turismo got released, many game players reached for their NeGcons to play this new amazing game. Namco released an even better, more stylized version of the NeGcon in Japan, the Black NeGcon, but this product never made it to the States, unfortunately. And then something unexpected happened. Sony released the dual analog controller, followed shortly after by the now famous DualShock. Using analog thumbsticks and having vibration feedback brought a new, unique experience to fans of racing games, and thus began the reduction of interest in the specialized handheld racing controllers during the latter 3 years of the PlayStation generation. Starting in 1998 and going out to 2000, some well-received racing games like Motor Racer 2, Driver, and Destruction Derby Raw were released and could not be played with a NeGcon. There were a few others too, like Driver 2, Road Rash 3D, Circuit Breakers, and of course all the Jet Moto games. The DualShock absorbed a good number of racing games during the PlayStation generation, and when the PlayStation 2 was released, with its DualShock 2 having pressure-sensitive buttons, most racing games were released without NeGcon compatibility built in. The NeGcon became a relic of the past. Around 2000, a few PlayStation to Dreamcast controller adapters were manufactured that had built-in NeGcon compatibility. Also, around that time, a PlayStation to Xbox controller adapter by Innovation, known as the X Connection, was released. This is also known as the DragonBox Super XB converter. In 2012, I put up a video presentation having to do with the X Connection and the NeGcon here on YouTube, and it was on the Nerdco channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description below if you're interested in taking a look at what I had to say about it. In that video, I also showed a way to add on additional adapters to get either PlayStation 2 racing games working with the NeGcon or PS3 games working as well. There's a problem with this though, and that is that the adapters I showed were not that easy to find. In fact, I'd say the X Connection is pretty much a downright rare controller adapter. And the discovery was definitely cool, but it didn't catch on due to the lack of availability of these adapters. So, for the past 7 years, I have sought for a new and better way to beat the odds and bring back the NeGcon to the current day game systems. Today, I am announcing that I have arrived at an innovative solution, and it involves adapters that aren't rare. So the door is now opening to every one of you. Let's welcome back the Namco NeGcon. Before I go over setting things up, I want to mention that you do need a PC to get this set up properly. And if you take a look in the description below, you'll see that I've included some information about some of the requirements that have to do with the PC you're going to use. Now, let's go over the equipment you'll need. First, you need to get a NeGcon. If you're considering using a different PlayStation 1 racing controller, I'll ask you that you see my comments in the description below, because there are a couple things you might want to know about the alternative controllers beforehand. Secondly, you need to buy a couple of controller adapters. Firstly, you need the PII-PIII and PC Controller Converter, which has a model number HYS P3028. It can be further identified by its little rectangular box halfway down the cord with P3 and PC Converter printed on it. This P3 PC converter can be found currently on eBay, and there are a few left at Walmart.com. I believe eBay will probably be stocked for a while with these. As an aside, there's another controller adapter that can be substituted, and that's the Radio Shack PSX to USB adapter. Again, eBay is the best source. The other main controller adapter you're going to need is the Cronusmax Plus. This is a device that will require initial setup connected to a computer. Once the initial setup is done for a particular gaming console, the computer will not be needed anymore. For the PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, you need a hardwired controller to initialize the connection with the Cronusmax Plus, but the PS3 doesn't require that. When you connect the NeGcon to the P3 PC Controller Converter and then the Cronusmax Plus, your NeGcon is considered by the Cronus Pro software definition to be a crossover controller. It's actually like you are taking a PS3 controller and making it work on a console it's not innately able to work on, and that's why the term crossover controller is used. So once you've obtained all the equipment, you need to download the Cronusmax Pro software program and install it to your PC. Within the program is the user manual, and you'll want to familiarize yourself with the device by checking out the Quick Start Guide. This guide has 9 bullet points, and the third one has to do with getting your Cronusmax Plus properly connected to your computer's USB port. The fourth one shows you how to update your device's firmware, and of course you want to have the latest firmware. Mine's 1.24. The fifth point in the Quick Start Guide is to find the correct controller and console, and you'll want to go to the part that is entitled Wired Controllers and read it. To establish that your input controller is a PlayStation 3 controller, you'll plug in the NeGcon and 2 adapters into the main USB port of the Cronusmax Plus, while it's plugged into your PC via its program port. Then you can go on to select which console you're aiming to use the NeGcon with as the output in the Cronus Pro software. When it comes to the PlayStation 4, the instructions discuss how the console can disconnect your crossover controller every 8 to 10 minutes, and how there are 2 ways to deal with that issue. So one of the ways has turned out not to work, and that was a method that required the use of a USB hub. That method is called full crossover support. The method called the partial crossover support, on the other hand, has turned out to effectively solve the issue of the 10-minute disconnects. You have to checkmark in the software the partial crossover support box in Options under the tab CMax Plus, and then program it into your device in order to implement it. Refer to the online manual for accomplishing that. Now, of course, you don't have to bother checkmarking that box if your intended game console isn't the PlayStation 4. So, anyway, once you've got this, when you play your game on the PS4, well, every 10 minutes you're going to get a message on the screen that pauses your game saying you need to press the X to reconnect your controller. And once you press X, the game is put back into action. Now, lastly, I want to cover pretty much the most important aspect of all of this. In order to get things working properly, you need to load a small program that activates the Cronusmax Plus to recognize your NeGcon. The makers of the Cronusmax Plus call these programs GPC scripts. In the Cronusmax Pro software is a library of GPC scripts. If you type NeGcon, N-E-G-C-O-N, into the library search window, you will locate 4 separate GPC scripts that were written by not only myself, but I had some help from my lovely wife, as well as a couple of guys over at the Cronusmax forums who gave me some really solid ideas. These guys are Bats as well as Crispy Croco, so thanks guys for your great help. There are details about these 4 GPC scripts in the description below, so make sure you do check that out. 3 of the scripts are for sim racing games, while the other one is meant for arcade racing games. And so you'll want all these scripts loaded up into your Cronusmax Plus. And each game that you decide to play, you might want to play around with choosing, script 1 or then try 2 and see if maybe 3 is better, 4 better. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll show you how to load them into the memory slots using the Cronus Pro software. It's very simple. First, you want to locate the NeGcon scripts in the online GPC library. Click on Download and you'll be taken to the GPC compiler screen. For each one that you download, you will want to name the file, whatever you'd like to call it, and then save it. Then click on the next tab, which is called Programmer. Look where it says Compiler Scripts and you'll see the 4 files you've downloaded. Drag and drop the first one into the first Cronus memory slot, and the second one in the second Cronus memory slot. Do the third and then the fourth in 4 different memory slots. Then click Program Device and you'll need to follow a short series of instructions. Once that's done, just disconnect the Cronusmax Plus from the mini USB cord that was connected to its program port, and then take it over to your console. Before you plug it into your console, you'll want to read it up in the Cronus Online Manual as to what your specific console type requires for the controller to be authenticated. Follow those instructions and you're good to go. On the PlayStation 3, it's quite simple because you don't have to really authenticate your controller. With the game console turned off, plug the NeGcon connected into the 2 adapters into the PlayStation 3's USB port number 1. Then plug a DualShock 3 into USB port number 2. Turn the console on and then make sure the controllers are functioning. Then look at the little window on the Cronusmax Plus. If it says 0, you are not using the GPC script you downloaded. Press the button below the little window to select the number of the memory slot you wish to put into use. Let's say you picked number 2. Now your NeGcon is activated and you can start up your racing game. The only little issue that can throw a wrench into getting the game started is if the game puts up a message asking you to sign into the online server and your NeGcon button press isn't recognized. Now I do cover that in the description below, so if you encounter it, just take a look at that and it'll solve your problem quickly and easily. I won't be going over it here. Another thing worth mentioning is that before you start driving in your in-game vehicle, you should check the game's option screen to make sure a couple things about controller button mapping are the right way and not the wrong way. Firstly, make sure the R2, which is the right trigger, is set for acceleration, and the L2, which is your left trigger, is set for braking. Make sure also that R3 and L3, which are those little click-in thumbstick functions, are not assigned to any activity. And this will provide for a trouble-free PlayStation 3 racing game experience. Now, if you want to use your NeGcon on the PS4, the method you'll use is a bit different. Turn your PlayStation on by pressing the button on the console, and then plug in your DualShock 4 into one of the USB ports. You go to Settings and then Devices, and you'll see that DualShock 4 is connected. Press the Options button, and then press Forget Device. Once you've properly disconnected the controller, plug in your Cronusmax Plus into one of the PS4's front USB slots. Then plug your PS4 controller into the Cronusmax Plus and press the PS button. If your Cronusmax Plus is showing a 0 in this little window, the DualShock 4 can be used effectively. Now you need to decide which of the 4 NeGcon scripts you'd like to put into use. Press the button on the Cronusmax to set the memory slot that you desire. Now you're going to disconnect the PS4 controller and plug your NeGcon with PIII and PC Converter into the Cronusmax Plus. The memory slot number will continue to be present in the window of the Cronusmax while using the controller. If you decide to change to your other GPC script, which is a different memory slot, just press the button. On the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, it's a lot like connecting to the PlayStation 4 in that you can authenticate using the controller that came with your console. And here's a tip: remove the batteries and then disconnect the controller to replace it with your NeGcon connected to the PIII PC Converter. Simple as that. Now you're ready to play your games. So what we've accomplished today is we've managed to get all these game systems compatible with the NeGcon. GPC scripting was definitely a challenge for me, and it took quite a long time. If you haven't seen a wired up retro come out for about a month, that might really be the reason why. It's actually getting close to 2 months. And so anyways, this has been a huge project, exciting, and I definitely am looking forward to hearing the feedback. And you know, there could be even future GPC scripts made. I was thinking there is actually a PS3 to PS2 controller adapter made by Brook. And if there's a special GPC script, then maybe you could get your NeGcon working on PS2 games that aren't PS2 compatible. So we'll see how that goes in the next upcoming couple of months. And I'll be looking forward to getting feedback on the Cronusmax forums. If you go there under the steering wheel area, I'm sure you'll be seeing me active there over the next month to 2 months. Who knows? I could be active there for a long time. But yeah, just look for the topic that has to do with the NeGcon if you want to interact. All right. And obviously interact with me in the comments below. You can look into subscribing to my channel. If you haven't heard of Wired Up Retro, you can take a look at all my past videos. I primarily deal with consoles from the past, not just the 90s, but 80s as well. The Atari game system, ColecoVision, Intellivision, etc. I really enjoy these game systems and all that they had to offer back in the past and all that they're offering in present day as well. All right, so make sure you check out my Twitter. I'll show my Twitter handle below so you can hit me up on Twitter. And you can also check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Definitely, I do accept gifts as long as there's no strings attached. All right, we'll talk to you later. Take care.